Well, hello, welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining us. James Litherland is an English singer and guitarist. He was a founding member of progressive rock band Colosseum back in 1968. James played on the first two albums before leaving to broaden his musical horizons. Over the years, Mr. Litherland has worked with artists such as Rod Stewart, Bill Wyman, and John Wetton, to name a few. We will delve into others like John Baldry, Sayer, and Steve Marriott in the following chat. James also has three solo albums to his credit, and he is the father of singer-producer James Blake. Well, welcome, James.
Thank you, Greg. Nice to meet you.
So you were born in Salford, Lancashire, is that right?
Yeah.
All right, talk a little bit about your childhood memories there.
Well, I was born in Salford, and after about 2 years old, my parents moved to a place called Chadderton, which is in between Manchester and Oldham. And my parents worked, obviously. We were poor. We weren't the poorest, but we were quite, we weren't well off at all. And my mum and dad, when they went to work, they would leave me with a childminder who was a friend of theirs. Like she had a couple of kids that she minded while the people went to work. And this is where my mum and dad they loved music.
Okay.
And I didn't realise until my dad died that he actually had a great voice and he used to do the clubs.
Ah, okay.
And I never knew that at all.
Mm-hmm.
He always used to whistle around the house. He was a great whistler, fantastic. And we had music, we had a record player that they used to play all the time.
Okay.
But during my childminding time, that's where it all started, really, because you got to imagine that area is textiles, cotton mills, stuff like that, right? Unlike Salford was different.
Okay.
Although it was only a few miles away, it was a different area. And because we had, I lived near the moors, near the Yorkshire moors.
Okay.
In fact, you could see it from our house, the hills and stuff. And so in that area, they had the textile mills because of the water. And so it was when my uncle and auntie, who were my childminders, he went to work in a cotton mill. And when he came home at night, he had, 2 daughters and a son. And they were in a sort of what they call a rah-rah band. And they used to do the carnival in Oldham. So it was like, kazoos and all that, with horns on the kazoos.
Uh-huh.
And the girls dressed in like short dresses and bobby socks and that sort of stuff, And then, so I used to watch the rehearsals in the kitchen, because the kitchen, there was only 2 rooms in the house. One was a living room, one was a kitchen. And because it was a council house, what they call a council house. It's like, I don't know what you call it in America. Yeah. And so I'd watch the rehearsals. And that was great because it was like very up and very energetic.
Right.
And then my uncle Les decided to, because he played harmonica, and he decided to form a harmonica gang. I don't know if you've ever heard of Boromínovich.
Who's that again? Say that.
It's called Boromínovich. I think he was, he's certainly in Hollywood thing, but he was obviously a Czechoslovak or Hungarian or whatever. I don't know what he was. And I didn't know at the time, but I do now. And they kind of copied it. It was a harmonica orchestra with about 6 people.
Mm-hmm.
Boromínovich was like an orchestra with loads of people, all playing harmonica, fantastic. And all different kinds of harmonicas, because harmonicas are, not just one kind of harmonica. And I used to watch them rehearse before my mum and dad came to pick me up,
Mm-hmm.
And my Uncle Les here's a funny story. Uncle Les gave me a harmonica, right? It was a chromatic. And I don't know if you know the difference between a chromatic and a diatonic. The chromatic's got the button. That's the one that Stevie Wonder plays.
Oh, right.
And all the blues guys play diatonics, right?
Okay, right.
Which are tuned to a chord.
Okay.
And so my Uncle Les gave me this chromatic, and it was in a coronation box.
Okay.
Right, so because the Queen, I think, was coronated in about 52, 53.
Okay. Early
so
50s.
I was, so I was born in 49. So it was like, I would be about 3 or 4,
okay,
maybe 5 at the most. And the coronation box was a big deal, the presentation box. So this is quite an interesting story. So anyway, so I got that. And that's kind of got me listening to music properly, like, and seriously being interested in it. And later on, I went through a few different things before I got to my guitar thing, which my parents bought me a guitar. But many years later, I lived in San Francisco, which I'll talk about later on. And I met a guy called Billy Roberts over there and became a friend of his. I don't know if you've ever heard of Billy Roberts.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Well, Billy Roberts wrote Hey Joe.
Yes, right.
And we became good friends, and I used to go to his studio and play stuff with him and all. And he was a really good harmonica player. And he came over to England, and he bought me, because by that time I got into harmonica and into playing it, And he bought me an E-flat Vamper, which is it's a diatonic, but it's bigger than the normal one, very deep. And he said, yeah, when you can play that, you can play harmonica. So I said, great. So I got stuck into that. But I thought, what can I give him? And the only thing I could think of was this harmonica in the coronation box.
Yeah.
So I gave him. And I regretted it, really, because it was a fantastic thing. I never played it because the button was broke. He was almost unplayable, but as a collector's thing, it was great. Anyway, many years after that, I had my son, and I taught him harmonica. Nobody knows this, but he can play harmonica. And so I taught him harmonica, and he's round at his grandparents one day in Wiltshire, they lived, and it's like a close, and he's took his harmonica playing away, and one of the neighbours said, James, come here, I've got something for you. So we went in the house, and the guy gave him a chromatic harmonica in a coronation box, exactly like the one I gave to Billy Roberts, and I've still got it here.
Wow.
So that's interesting. So anyway, so after that, and then when I got a couple of things between, and then my parents got me a guitar, and I didn't play it. I got the guitar about 8, and I was playing it because by that time I'd heard like Lonnie Donegan.
Right.
Have you ever heard of Lonnie Donegan? Lonnie
Yeah.
Donegan kind of brought the blues to England.
Yeah.
And so I was playing kind of Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley, and all that sort of stuff on one string,
Okay.
And I got bored with it because I wasn't getting anywhere. I just, so I put it in a corner. And then about 2 years later, by the time I was 10, by this time my parents had hired a television, because at that time you didn't buy one, you hired one.
Okay.
Right? And
like renting.
Yeah, it was renting it. Yeah, renting the television. In fact, I think it was Radio Rentals or something like that, the company.
Yeah.
And so one day I saw there was a play on the telly, and I watched it. And the play was about it was a house which had been turned into flats, apartments, right? Mm-hmm. And in the house there was a guy sat on the stairs playing a guitar all day, and people would go past him and up and down and saying hello to him and all that. And that was the gist of the play, right? But I was watched the guy, and this is the first time I'd ever seen anybody play a guitar. I'd heard guitar, but I'd never seen it. Right? Mm. And he's playing chords. And I went, chords, of course. So I went out the next day, bought a chord book. Bert Whedon's Playing a Day, which I've still got. And immediately was playing 12 bars and making songs up, you know, singing and playing. Yeah. So that's really how it started.
How it started. Well, what were some bands and musicians that you were into as a teenager?
When you say into, what do you mean?
Or earlier than that?
I listened to them.
Yeah, preteen or teen. What about? Can you remember your first album or single that you got?
Yeah, the first single I bought was Cliff Richard's "Living Doll."
Okay.
And I saved up my pocket money. I bought that, you know. And also, like, before that, I was listening to stuff like, well, my parents had these two tracks that used to play all the time. One was called, one went something like, close the door, they call me through the window, close the door, they call me through, whatever, yeah. And the other one was 20 tiny fingers, right? 20 tiny fingers, 20 tiny toes. Each with two smiling faces, each with a turned up nose. One looks like mommy with a cute little curl on top, and the other one's got a big bald spot, exactly like his pop, 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 pop. Right, so. And that was the first thing that I can't remember. I remember, but then I listened. I got at one point I got a transistor radio for Christmas or whatever, and I was listening to things like John D. Loudermilk, and Bobby Darin, all that sort of stuff. And I started to. I first heard the Beatles on the telly, and I thought, what a terrible name that is, rubbish, you know. But then, of course, I got into the Beatles later. But meanwhile, I formed a band with a guy at school, and I met a guy not far up the road from me who was a guitar player as well, and he was a bit older than me, a couple of years older than me. And we got together and he said, well, look, you're better than me. I'll get a bass and I'll play bass, right? And so I said, okay, great. So then we formed a band with him and the drummer from school and this guy, a guy, funnily enough, called Roger Gibson. And he one day said, there's a gig in town, man. Come and see it, right? It was at a place called the Free Trade Hall, Manchester, which is a big deal in Manchester. It's one of the biggest halls. And it was a black blues show. And it had, it had about quite a few acts, and they're all doing 2 numbers each, you know. Mm-hmm. So it had Sugar Pie de Santa, Howling Wolf, Sonny Boy Williamson, Sonny Terry Brown and McGee, Sonnyland Slim. Who's the bass player with Howling Wolf? He wrote, Willie Dixon. Willie Dixon. He wrote all the songs, you know, and Hubert Sumlin. And that night changed my life. Yeah. Because like they were the greats, you know. It was amazing. And of course, in America, they couldn't get a gig because they were black. Right, exactly. Over here, we embraced them with open arms. It was fantastic. Right. And so then I formed a band called, I got another guy in from school, funny enough, and we formed a band called the R&B Sect. And we did like Baby Please Don't Go and all that sort of stuff, you know. And then we started doing gigs, clubs, stuff like that. I mean, at first I was doing Beatles stuff, Oh, by the way, that's what one interesting thing was, while I was doing the Beatles stuff and stuff like that, I went to a concert in Manchester and I saw the Graham Bond organisation.
Yes, Graham Bond, yeah. Yeah.
So Graham Bond organisation was Dick Exor-Smith, Jack Bruce, Ginger Baker, and Graham Bond. Mm-hmm. And Graham Bond was just genius. I don't know if you ever heard him.
Yes,
but he was genius.
Yeah.
And so later on in life, when it came to Colosseum, I saw the advert. I'd heard of Dick Exor-Smith. I'd never heard of the others.
Uh-huh.
That's why I went for the advert. Yeah, that's why I answered the advert. You know. Anyway, so then I then went on from that band to I got offered a job in a band with another guy from school called Steve Bolton.
Okay.
And he was in a band called The Puzzle. And they were doing all Stax stuff. So they had a saxophonist, bass player, drummer, and Steve, mm-hmm. and me. And I was playing lead guitar. And we did loads of gigs in the local area. And Steve Bolton went on to he joined Atomic Rooster. And he also went on to join Paul Young.
Okay.
And eventually, I think he played with The Who at some point.
Okay.
And then after that band, I got offered another gig with another guy from school. Because by this time, I'm only 15.
You were young. You were young.
Yeah, and I've done loads and loads and loads of gigs, you know, with different styles. But then I got another offer of a gig, and they had a fabulous guitar player. So I joined as a rhythm player and singing harmonies, and we had a singer who played a bit of harmonica as well. And we were doing Motown basically. A lot of stuff was Motown stuff because it kind of graduated from blues, R&B, Stax, Motown. And we were doing stuff like, in fact, we were called the Go-Go. So we were doing stuff like going to a Go-Go and I'll Keep On Holding On, all this stuff with some great harmonies. And there was a band called The Action who used to come around the country. Have you ever heard of them?
Right. Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
Well, they were just tremendous.
Uh-huh.
And one of the guys called Alan King, or Alan Bam King, I think he went on to join Paul Carrick in, I think he was on How Long? Alan King is like really the unsung hero of music in London, right. For sure. He doesn't even know I know him or anything about him because I've never met him. But I thought he was great. He was a harmony singer playing rhythm and he was brilliant. And the action was great. I still love that song they did called Since I Lost My Baby, which I think was a Temptations song.
Yeah,
so that's, you know, basically what I was doing. And then after that, I got into, when that folded after a few years, I mean, we did loads of gigs. Again, we did a lot of universities and stuff like that. And then we started getting into Hendrix and stuff like that because the guitarist could play anything. He was brilliant. Called Rob. And so then after that folded, I kind of got into blues again. Started a blues band. And that's around that time is when I answered the gig for Colosseum.
Talk about Colosseum, how the band came together.
Well, they already knew each other.
Mm-hmm.
They were from the same area, right? And then also, Tony, Dick, and John had played with John Mayall's Blues Breakers.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That's where they kind of, I suppose they kind of met there. I mean, I think John had played with the Graham Bond organisation as well before that. And then they got offered a job with John Mayall. And Tony knew Dave Greenslade. And Dave had been with Chris Farlow and the Thunderbirds.
Okay. Chris Farlow,
and had a couple of hits with like Out of Time. Yeah.
Yeah, I had that right by me. So,
So, well, John Mayall's from Manchester as well.
Right. Right.
which is
right.
Salford's in Manchester, or not in Manchester. Literally, you walk one step from Manchester, literally one step, you're in Salford.
Okay.
So it's almost indistinguishable. So anyway, at that point, they decided, for whatever reason, to form a band, and they were looking for a guitar player. And so they put an advert in the paper. And I was at that time, although I'd been doing gigs and stuff, I was in a normal job, which I hated.
Right.
And when one thing happened, and it just made me, I thought, I'm never working again, man. This is it. And I literally walked out. I only had what they call half a crown, which is like, at the time, 2 shillings and sixpence in my pocket.
Uh-huh.
Went to the paper shop, saw the advert, thought, well, I'll give that a go. Right? And there's a phone box outside, phoned them up, and the guy said to me, where are you from? I said, where are you phoning from? I said, Manchester. He said, well, because Manchester and London are about 200 miles away. So he said, well, as you're so far away, you know, he said, I'll try and put you off. We're looking for somebody as good as Peter Green and Eric Clapton.
Yeah.
So I said, yeah, that's me. But I wasn't going to say no, because I wouldn't have got the audition, would I?
Right.
And I thought, at least I'll get the opportunity to play with some great players, you know. That was the idea. Yeah. I went down on the day you were supposed to, got the train from Manchester, had the day off work, went down to London, went to the place they were auditioning, which is in the Elephant and Castle, a place called St. Matthew's Hall. There's a church hall. Did the audition, and that was funny because they were in a circle, right? And there's all these guys sat in the back waiting to audition, you know. And they'd play something, and Dick would go, and you had to solo, right? and so they just, and so then they said to me, can you sing? I said, yeah, sure. He said, well, sing us something. So, okay. So I had a lead belly songbook at home, right? And I sang, so I thought, okay. So I did Backwater Blues.
Okay.
And I went, oh, great, you know. And then off I went. And I went up to Manchester, went straight back to Manchester. And this would be on the Monday, right? So on the Wednesday, I'd given them a phone number to contact me, right? But the phone, we didn't have a phone. And I gave the neighbour's phone number, right?
Oh, okay.
And then on Wednesday, my mother said, oh, Grayson's away this week. You know, I went, what? I've just given him my phone.
No. Oh, no.
So I phoned him up and I said, look, I've been to an audition, but I give him the phone number. It's the woman's away. So, and they said, oh, what's your name? And I told them. They said, oh, yeah, well, you're on the shortlist. Can you come down on Friday and do the audition again? You know, we'll pay for your expenses, like we pay for your train fare. So I said, yeah, sure. So again, I had a day off work, went down to London, and I got the job as a singer. But they picked another guy called, what do you call him? Jim Roach.
Okay.
And he was a really good guitar player, really good. And so he got the job as a guitar player. They didn't really want a 6-piece band. They only wanted a 5-piece, but because of the money, you know.
Right.
And so they picked him as well. So great. They wanted us to start on Monday morning. So, okay. So I went back home, said to my mother, get me cards from work. That's I don't know what you do over there, but we have a card like an employment card.
Yes.
I said, pick me cards up, I'm leaving. And said, I had a girlfriend. I said, look, I'm going down to London. You fancy coming down there? You know, and she said, and the mother said, yeah. I said, okay. So I'm off, right? So Monday morning, I'm living in London. It was great. And the wonderful thing was, I got to the rehearsal room and we started rehearsing. I'd got all my gear on the train. I got my amp, my guitar, and the suitcase on the train. Got a cab to the rehearsal. So we were rehearsing, and then about 12:30, 1 o'clock, right, break for lunch. We went to a pub across the road for lunch, you know, and then we went back to start playing again. And it suddenly hit me, blimey, this is my job.
Right, right.
I can't believe it.
Uh-huh.
You know, I've been doing it for free, and here it's a job. I'm getting paid for it. You know, it's brilliant. So that was, yeah, it was great. I loved it.
Well, what did your dad think about that? You said your
They
mom
were
wasn't.
worried. They were worried. I was 19.
Right, right.
And I've just gone to London on my own, you know.
Right.
But, you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained, is it, you know?
That's right. That's right. Well, talk about once you were in the band, how did the songwriting process typically go with the band members? Was it a collaborative?
I mean, basically at the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
Dave was writing most of the stuff.
Okay.
Which is why most of it is instrumental.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'd already written, you know, the first time I sat down with a guitar, I started writing songs. Yeah. So I had quite a few songs. And then I just sort of, you know, I've got a song here, John, you know, blah, blah, blah. I can't remember what it was, something like Butty's Blues, or I can't remember which ones it was now. But I mean, you know, and they went, oh yeah, great. So they did it. Right? And by the time it come to the second album, mm-hmm. I was in writing mode.
Yeah.
So all the time I'm thinking songs, you know. In fact, funnily enough, Elegy, I was watching an interview with Paul Simon the other day. Mm-hmm. And he said one of these songs he got in a dream, you know. Mm-hmm. Well, Elegy, I literally woke up about 3 or 4 in the morning. I had the lot in my head, right? Everything. Yeah. The words, the music, the chords, the everything, right? The tune. Yeah. I had a guitar next to my bed. I went, worked out the chords, wrote the lyrics down, went back to sleep. That was amazing, really.
Isn't it funny and interesting how inspiration comes? You know, it just...
Yeah, well, when you're in the groove and you're doing it all the time. I mean, even now, I wake up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And I've got an iPad next to the bed, and I'll be going like this, writing lyrics.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have to use sheets of paper anymore. You can.
No.
Well, let's get back to the first album.
Yep.
Those Who Are About to Die Salute You.
Yep.
What are your memories of recording that album?
Well, the biggest memory, we recorded it about 4 times.
Oh, okay.
And John was never happy with the drum sound. And he maintained that if the drum sound wasn't right, that it didn't feel right.
Yeah.
I kind of disagreed with that.
Did you ever butt heads?
Sorry?
Did you ever butt heads with him or other band members?
Not at that time, but later on, yeah, definitely.
Later on, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, was it a little intimidating at all being in the studio?
Yeah. Very. Well, I'd been in the studio before. Mm-hmm. Not many times, just a couple of demos and stuff. I think what was intimidating more than anything was the fact that the musicians, they were really good. Mm-hmm. And they were quite intellectual.
Okay.
And I'm not intellectual. I don't know anything about music. Even now, I don't know much about it. I know how to play it.
Yeah. But you don't read it. Don't read it.
No. I've got no interest in reading it.
Right.
Because for me, the eyes are distracting to the music. Mm. You know, you get somebody like Stevie Wonder, Ray Charles, they haven't got vision.
Right.
All they've got is the sound, right? The music. That's why they're great. Because it's a whole distraction you don't have to worry about.
Right. your sophomore release, Valentine Suite. I think this is when the on this song, especially the 17-minute sidelong track, the Suite. I think this is when the band came into their own. There's kind of hitting on all cylinders.
Well, that was Dave. That was Dave Greensleeve.
Yeah, but I think that was really, really nice, coming together of everyone, and just a great, great track, all the way through. What are your thoughts? What were your thoughts about that song?
Well, at the time, I wasn't thinking about things like that because, I mean, I know how it came together because I was there, obviously. And it was just little improvisational pieces and they put them all together. My mind works in songs.
Right.
And at the time, I was just loving going along with everything and, being a professional musician. And then we started traveling and all that sort of stuff. I'd never been abroad. I'd never been to another country. Mm-hmm. And so I was kind of wrapped up in all that. And although I was learning the music and stuff like that, I wasn't... I wasn't thinking about that process. I can't remember the other ones we did. What was it? It was Valentine Suite was another one as well. But anyway, obviously, Valentine Suite was the one that kicked it off.
Yeah.
But then in the second album, if you notice, there were more songs in the second album.
Right. Yeah.
So there's like Butty's Blues, Machine Demands a Sacrifice, Elegy, and possibly something else as well, which I either written totally, or some of it had written. Like with Machine Demands a Sacrifice, I wrote that with Pete Brown. So he did the lyrics, I did the music.
Yeah.
Pete Brown I'd known obviously through Colosseum because he was a friend of Dick Exall Smith's,
Elegy, I think, and I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you. Honestly, I'm not. But I think it's one of the best Colosseum tracks. One it's real easy on the ear. And it's also breezy, almost easy listening, if you could call it that. Mm-hmm. I could hear. Are you familiar with the KPM library music? Okay, a lot of that.
You mean tiny desk concerts?
Yeah, it's a library music, KPM, and there's a lot of like John Cameron, one of my first interviews. Who he wrote a song that Edward's Hand did on their second album.
Okay.
I believe it. And then some other ones. Gosh, I can't think right offhand, but Laurie Johnson. A lot of composers. They would do these easy listening kind of tracks that were just. I like that kind of stuff. Maybe at the time when I was younger, I didn't, but they really grow on you, and it's a real summery, real breezy type music. So
Elegy sold loads. I mean, really a million, over a million.
Yeah. And it's a real likable track. Yeah, really. I mean, you can listen to it the first time, and it doesn't have time to, you don't have to listen to it several times for it to grow on you. It's immediately likable.
Right.
So, well, that's good to hear that it's sold so well.
Yeah, I did get paid. That's the negative.
Right. Well, what do you want, the world? I mean, come on.
I get paid.
You're right.
At the time, I had no idea about business.
Yeah.
No idea about any of it, where the money goes, where it's from. I had no clue, right? Mm-hmm. And I didn't know anything about PRS, which is, they bring the money in for you from stuff. Didn't know anything about that. By the time I joined PRS and said, okay, where's my money for Elegy? They'd accounted to my publisher, which was the same as the manager in Colosseum. And that was it. Never saw it.
Yeah.
Later on, John got the rights back And then from then on, I got paid because John paid us. He was, John was straight.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. Well, so when did you leave? After the second album?
After the second album, yeah.
After the second. And then they brought in Clem Clemson.
Yeah.
And then there was one more Colosseum album, Daughter of Time. And then John went on to form Colosseum 2, which you weren't part of either one, so we'll move on from there. Now, let me ask you this. The folk band Jade, you played on their album, Fly on Strange Wings. Was that prior to Edward's Hand?
Yeah.
Okay. That's where you met Rod Edwards, because he was in the band.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, basically, that was at the time of Mogul Thrash.
Okay.
So after Colosseum, I formed Mogul Thrash.
Okay.
And what had happened was we did the American tour with Colosseum,
right?
And I hadn't. There was something in my mind I was starting to get concerned about. There's a few things that happened. I don't really want to go into it. Well, there's a few things that happened. And I was starting by that time to get unhappy about things. But musically, I was beginning to realize that when I stopped playing rhythm, the groove went away.
Okay.
And I was, so if I was playing a solo, when everybody else is playing a solo, there's a groove because I'm chunking around on the rhythm, right? But when I stopped playing rhythm, it changed. And that was really worrying me. And so from a musical point of view, I was starting to get, concerned. Because by this time, I'm starting to think in a different way. Mm-hmm. We did this American tour, and we played with some great people. We played with the Byrds. We played with the Barkays at the Whiskey A Go Go in LA. But when we went to San Francisco, we played the Fillmore. And in fact, funnily enough, at that time we were on the West Coast, right? Because we were in LA, San Francisco, all that. If we'd have been on the East Coast, we'd have been doing Woodstock.
Oh, wow.
Right? But we're on the other coast. So we played the Fillmore, which to me was just mind-blowingly great, because I'd been into like Paul Butterfield, Elvin Bishop, Mike Bloomfield, all of that. It was all like live at the Fillmore, So to be doing that gig was just great, Anyway, so we played with the Youngbloods and Chicago, which was then Chicago Transit Authority, CTA.
Okay, Jesse Cullen Young, yeah.
And Jesse Cullen Young was in the Youngbloods, wasn't he?
Right. Yeah, that's why. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but Chicago were just great.
Oh yes.
They were mind-blowing.
Their early stuff, Chicago Transit Authority. Yeah, that's some of my.
Yeah, well, it was a real eye opener, because I watched them and I just thought, wow, because these guys, can really, really play.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Now we were supposed to be a jazz rock group. These guys were every bit as good musically as we were, but they had great songs and they had a great feel.
Yep.
And they also had a great sound.
Yeah.
Because they were the first band I saw that they had small amps on stage, mic'd everything up, and it all went through the PA, and they had a guy on the desk.
Oh, okay.
So when I came back to London, that's what I formed. So that's with Mogul Thrash, that was the idea with Mogul Thrash.
Okay.
And that night really changed my life, because I was mind blown by it. It was great. And Peter Cetera is a great singer.
Yeah.
And he's a great writer. And so the band were great, So that's when I started with Mogul Thrash. I got that together, and with John Wetton.
Yeah, I'll jump ahead to that. I had that out of order. Originally, it was James Litherland's Brotherhood.
Yeah.
But then changed the name, and that was what Brian Auger suggested that.
No.
No. Okay.
No. There was Brian Auger produced the album, and Brian Auger was great. Really nice guy. He, the production was great. It was great. We had a great time. And we used to be. I mean, two of the guys in Mogul Thrash, Molly and Rod, Malcolm Duncan and Roger Ball, the saxophonists, they were Scottish, and they later on became the Average White Band.
Right. I recognize those names. Yeah.
Well, basically, we got to be really good friends. Everybody in the band, it was really good, and the atmosphere was good. And we used to watch this program. Have you ever heard of Spike Milligan?
Yes, I have. Yep.
So he had this program, and there was a thing over here called what was it called? There was a program over here called I'm not sure it was, but there was a guy called Michael Miles.
Okay.
And he had a gong, right? Or somebody had a gong, and the idea was that Michael Miles would ask questions, and you had to answer without saying yes or no. Right? Okay. And if you said yes or no, the guy hit the gong and you're out, right? And that was called the yes/no interlude. That's what it was. And so Spike Milligan did a skit on that, right? And he called himself Mogul Thrash.
Oh, that's
and we loved it. So that's how we got the name Mogul Thrash.
That's how they came. Yeah.
And funnily enough, I'll tell you the one about the. Here's news for you. Nobody knows this. The Average White Band, because when we Mogul Thrash, we got really into funk, right? And the saying of Malcolm and Roger was like better than the average white man.
Okay.
Right, because they're really into black music, Right. And so when they formed their band, they called it the Average White Band.
I didn't know where that originated. Right.
That's it.
I like that. Talk about blue-eyed soul. I mean, people today that didn't know Average White Band, they hear the music. It's like, and then you see that it's white guys playing that kind of music. They're just blown away, because everything about it is soulful. It sounds just like. I mean, they just like.
Well, they asked me to do it originally,
Yeah.
But okay. I didn't see a place for me because it was like James Brown on steroids, and it wasn't really. I like their stuff. I mean, some of the stuff I really like, and they're all really great. I mean, Alan Gorry was great. Right. Martin Roger, great. The original drummer was great. We met him in Sicily in Mogul Thrash, and we got him the gig. First off, we got him the gig in Brian Auger's band. Okay. And then they asked him to join, but that was Robbie McIntosh, and he died.
Yeah, he did. You're right. Well, you mentioned the Brian Auger producing the album Mogul Thrash. I always liked his work with Trinity, Julie Driscoll, and Oblivion Express.
He's great. He's brilliant.
Cool. Yeah, it's great. You're right. My go-to track from Mogul Thrash is the single "Sleeping in the Kitchen." The horns is what really stands out in that one.
Well, right? The horns were great. I mean, Molly was great. Malcolm was great, but Roger was just a genius. And I'm sure it was Roger that came with the, with pick up the pieces and all that. It's got because I knew as soon as I heard it that was Roger's writing.
Right. Yeah, you can hear that.
Yeah.
Well, why was there no follow-up album?
Because a couple of things. One thing we found the management were doing things that we weren't happy with. One thing was we got offered, we did an audition for Atlantic.
Mm-hmm.
And Nessie Ertigan, who's Ahmet's brother, came down to London and auditioned us. Right? And he loved us. We're in a pub in King's Cross in London, just as a showcase for him. He loved us. We loved him. And he produced John Coltrane.
Okay.
So the horn players were like ecstatic, right?
Right.
And Atlantic offered us at that time, which is like 1970, 71, offered us $100,000 to sign for Atlantic.
Wow.
Now that's a lot of dough. You work out that. That's
Yeah.
millions. Our management turned it down. What? We loved them. They loved us. They were offering us a fortune and they turned it down. So that was the rot. So eventually we left.
Yeah.
And at the time we left, there was a Ford strike on over here.
Okay.
And we had 2 Ford vans, one for the gear, one for the people. And the vans were breaking down. We couldn't get the parts. And so we weren't working. We couldn't work. We had no money coming in. And the Ford strike went on for ages and ages and ages. So we decided to pack it in. And that's what happened. We just packed it in.
Yeah. Yeah. Too much to overcome there, sounds like.
It was ridiculous, you know. So it's just fate, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Bad luck, fate. Yeah, exactly. Well, talk about now how you got corralled into playing on Jade's Strange Wings.
Right, so basically, Mike Rosen, who was in Mogul Thrash, he played guitar as well as trumpet.
Okay.
And he phoned me up one day and he said, Jim, there's I've got to do this session and I'm not confident at all. Will you come down and help me out with it? So I said, yeah, sure. So I went down and it was John Miller and Rod Edwards and Roger Hand, right? Because they had a company called Triumvirate. They were a production company. And and obviously Rod was in Jade. And at the time, the bass player on the album was Pete Sears, who went on to play with Jefferson Airplane.
Starship.
Yeah. And the other guy, the drummer, was Clem Catini.
Okay.
And Clem Catini was big here, and he did a lot of stuff.
Yes. He did.
And so they asked me to do this part, so I did it, and then blah blah blah. I went off. I think Mike got the money.
Someone got it.
And then he phoned me up again. He said, "Can you come down and help me out with another session?" It happened about 3 or 4 times, right? And this was all on the Jade album.
Yeah.
Then eventually, John Miller turned around and he said, "Listen, man," he said, "every time I want you have to have him as well."
Right.
Here's my phone number, you know. So then he started doing that. And then I got John roped into it as well, John Wetton.
Okay.
And we started, because by that time, Pete had gone off and doing other things, Pete Sears. Yeah. And so we did quite a lot of sessions. And that's how the George Martin thing came about, because he did Edward's Hand.
Right.
And so, you know, by that time, he'd got, first off, he was producing it in a place called Morgan Studios in Harlesden, or Willesden, I think it was. And then he got Air London together. He got Air London in Oxford Street. And so he'd call us a lot, and we'd do a lot of sessions for George and John Miller.
Okay.
And George was just,
yeah,
he was just brilliant. You got no idea how great he was. I mean, I know everybody says, oh, he's great, but working with him was a complete education, you know.
That was my question. That was one of my questions, yeah.
Well, he was just brilliant. He was brilliant. He was like, he walked in and he had a charisma about him. Mm-hmm. You know, you knew this guy was great. He spoke very softly. Don't worry about it.
Unlike the phone, right? Softly, unlike the phone, right? He didn't speak like that.
So he spoke softly,
Yeah.
and he was very what's it called? Respectful.
Okay, right.
But you know, he knew his shit. You know,
Yeah.
like so he'd say like, I want a harmony here, right? And he wouldn't say, I want a harmony here. Can you come up with one? He'd say, I want this harmony here. And he'd play it for you and sing it for you, and that's the part you did. You know.
Okay.
And he was just a lovely guy, but he was obviously brilliant as well. I mean, he wasn't just lovely; he was great, brilliant, you know. And that was a massive thing for me, learning. I learned a lot there, you know. And Edward's hand, you know, was just Rod and Rog, and George Martin and John Miller doing the stuff, and me on guitar, and I think was John Wetton on bass on that. I think he was.
I think he was. I think
he was. Yeah. So
well,
me and John got on bass as well. Huh?
I had been into them, following them when they were Piccadilly Line with the huge world of Emily Small, and then on their first couple of albums, so earlier material than Stranded. But you know, I did enjoy both Stranded and Rainshine. You know, the two that you played on.
Well, I'll tell you a story. When George did, we got Air London together, right? And one of the problems with Air London was in a big block of shop, like a shop on Oxford Street, and it was right on the Piccadilly Circus, right, which is like the most busy place in the whole of London. Yeah. And he's got the studios right at the top floor of this place, right on the roundabout there.
Yeah.
And obviously the vibration, because it's under a tube station as well. So the vibration from the trains was coming up through the building and into the microphones.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So George says, we got in there one day to do whatever we were doing. And he says to us, me and John, he said, just come next door a minute. I went, hello, what's going on here? You know. So we went next door to this room, big brand new room. And he said, after 3, jump. And we went, okay. 1, 2, 3. We all jumped. Me, John, and George Martin all jumped up. And as we landed on the floor, the room went like that. And what he'd done, he'd built a room within a room and got springs underneath it to take away the vibration.
Oh, how interesting.
Brilliant. Yeah, brilliant. So, yeah.
Wow. That's the kind of stories I like to hear too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, from Stranded, I think one of my favorite tracks is "Hello America." Do you remember that one?
Yeah. It rings a bell.
Yeah.
I don't go back and listen to stuff 50 years ago. Something I do.
Yeah, it wasn't real positive about America. Let's just say that, you know.
All right. It's like a bit like there's a country song, something about the woman singing there. I don't look in the rearview mirror. I don't want to see where I've already been.
Right. That's good. Well, you probably don't remember this one too, either from Rainshine, but New York City Rain. And of course, they're both about America, you know, but that's a really nice track on that one.
Well, we should have been doing a tour there, but it never came off. So.
Oh, how come? Yeah.
No idea.
Interesting.
Because I wasn't involved in any of the business side, you know.
Okay. Well, let's move on to Long John Baldry, or John Baldry as he was known then.
No, it was called Long John Baldry then.
Yeah, originally, and then later on when he went back to his blues material, he just dropped the long. But I'm familiar with his earlier, more pop material on Pie. You know, I always thought he had a great soulful voice. I mean,
he was brilliant.
Wonderful.
He had a great voice.
Yeah. We'll talk about Everything Stops for Tea from 1972. Recollections from surrounding that album?
Okay, so basically, after Mogul Thrash,
Mm-hmm.
I met some guys from Manchester. One of them was American, actually, but they'd come down from Manchester, and I'd seen them. And in fact, funnily enough, Steve Bolton was in the band at the time.
Oh, okay.
And so they came down, and the drummer was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And he sang. He was a good singer. And the bass player was from Salford.
Okay.
I'd met him years before. And he was a great bass player, really great. And he could sing as well. He was a good singer. So we decided to form a band, a three-piece. And we called it Million. And we all sang, and it was really funky. And once we got it together, we started doing gigs. And on one of the gigs, or a couple of the gigs, I think, we played with the Faces.
Oh, okay.
With Rod Stewart.
Yeah.
And Rod Stewart liked us. And he said, he told his management company about us, right? And he offered us a gig with John Baldry. So we didn't realise at the time, but we started to find out what was going on. And what it was that John Baldry Long John Baldry had always been known as a great blues singer, you know, like in the Steam Packet and all of that sort of stuff. And obviously Rod Stewart and him were good friends and stuff like that. Right? And the other good friend of his was Elton John.
Okay.
Because John Baldry was gay. Right. And all his management were gay and all that sort of stuff. It's a big gay scene. And we didn't, at that time, we had no idea about all that stuff. You know, my gaydar wasn't working at all, you know.
Gaydar, yeah.
But we knew John was gay, obviously.
Yeah.
So that was the connection with Elton John. So the problem with John Baldry was that he'd always been known as this blues singer, but somehow one of some management or other down the line had got him into this, like, he had a hit record he had Let the Heartaches Begin.
Right. Yeah.
And he also did the theme tune for an Olympic Games. I think it was Canada, actually. I might be wrong. No, what are we talking about? Obviously, it was Mexico. And the song was called Mexico. Right? And so he'd have these two hits. And wherever John went, trying to sing blues, everybody's going, let the heartaches begin, Mexico, right? So it blown him out, you know. He couldn't get a proper gig anywhere.
Yeah.
And so they decided to put a blues album together, or a bluesy album together, to get him back on track.
Yeah.
And what they did was Rod Stewart did one half of the album, produced one half of it, and Elton John produced the other half.
Okay.
So they got me, John, and Bill from Million, John Dentiff and Bill Smith from Million, and he had a piano player called Ian MacDonald or MacDougall, a Scottish guy, really great blues. He was a lot older than us. Great, you know, player, like Jelly Roll Blues type thing. You know? And so we did the album. We did gigs with him as well. And he was a great guy, lovely man, and brilliant singer. I mean, we was at a place in the Midlands, and we did Going Down Slow. And I'll never forget it. Stick out in my mind forever. It was the most incredible version I've ever heard. It was brilliant, you know. And so John was great, really nice. But I mean, he was very, he got walked all over.
Okay.
You know, he wouldn't stand up for himself. He got sort of bludgeoned into things, you know. But he was a lovely bloke. But he took his good nature a lot of people took his good nature in the wrong way, you know.
Took advantage.
Yeah, so basically, the great thing, when I say I worked with Rod Stewart, so he was playing, he was producing the album. Mm-hmm. And what he did was, what was great about him as well was, because Rod Stewart, I always loved Rod Stewart singing, you know, even ever since I was a kid. Because he had a band called Rod Stewart and the Soul Agents, which I'd seen in a place called Rochdale at the Cuby Club. And that was great. And then obviously he joined, had he joined Jeff Beck by then? I can't remember. No, he hadn't. No, he hadn't by then. No, because Faces came after Jeff Beck. Yeah. I'd seen him with Jeff Beck. Then he joined the Faces after Jeff Beck.
Okay.
He was in the Jeff Beck band, like, you know, the one with the orange on the cover and all that sort of stuff. And then instead, while we were doing the album, while we were routining the tracks, rather than have John sing the routines, which would like blow his voice out really, Rod Stewart came down and sang it with us, you know. Okay. And he was just tremendous because he had this great vibe about him, you know. He was really good, really great. There's some producers are sort of, it's all down, you do this, yeah. He was like up and it's all great guys, you know, blah, 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 and really good vibes, you know. And I learned from George Martin and Rod Stewart and people like that when you're producing, the most important thing about production, it's nothing to do with the sound. You've got an engineer to do all that. Yeah. You've got to get the best out of the person that you're producing. Mm-hmm. You've got to get the best out of them. And to do that, you have to have them vibed up. Right. And into it, you know. So they're in the zone. That's when you get the magic, you know. Right. And Rod Stewart and George Martin were great at all that. They were great, you know. So yeah, it was great. So yeah, that was really good.
Getting the most out of. Well, the couple of the tracks that you played on, venturing into gospel territory with Lord
Remember Me.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorites of all time.
I don't know if you remember the background singers on that.
Yeah, the lady singer. I can't remember her name now.
Really effective.
Oh yeah, no, I'll tell you what it was. It was. I'm trying to think of the singer out of, because I worked with her, Maggie Bell. Yeah, so okay. It wasn't Maggie Bell. Maggie Bell's from Scotland. It was Madeline Bell.
Madeline Bell. Bell.
Yeah, she was brilliant. I mean, I love that track. I loved it. That was a great track. I'm so proud to have been on that track.
Yes. And then the other one, you mentioned Willie Dixon earlier when you were talking about the blues influence.
Can't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah, you can't judge a book by the cover. Yeah. Sounds like that one was a lot of fun to play on.
It was great. We had a great time.
Yeah. Now moving ahead, couple of years. Leo Sayers, Just a Boy.
Right.
I like his earlier material, you know, stuff off of this album.
Well, before we did that.
Okay, go ahead.
No, before we did that tour, that album, or that tour, me, John, and Bill, who'd been with John Baldry, got offered the gig with Dick Exall Smith. Right, okay. Dick Exall Smith formed a band. Okay. And it's called Manchild. Okay. And he had this thing like a suite, like Valentine's Suite, called The Pirate's Dream. Okay. And he wanted us to do it, right? Because we already had he asked me, he phoned me up and he asked me, could I put a band together? So I said, well, I've already got a band, it'd be great. Mm-hmm. So we just needed a keyboard player. And I'd been to see a band and played with them about a year before. And they had this keyboard player. In fact, the two guys they had in it, one was Dave Rose, and the other one was Graham Broad. Right? And Graham Broad comes into it later on. So Dave Rose was really great keyboard player, really nice bloke. So I went round to his house and said, you know, you want to do this? And he did. So he joined the band for Dick's band.
Okay.
And we did an American tour with Dick, and we supported Deep Purple, which was kind of a mismatch, really.
Yeah.
And then after that, we went for the auditions for Leo Sayer.
Okay.
And we got the job with that. And that was the four of us, like me, Dave, John, and Bill. All that was the band with Leo Sayer. So we'd done Dick Exall Smith, and then we'd done Leo Sayer. So me and John and Bill had been with, like, from Baldry to Dick to Leo, and Dave joined us at the Dick stage, and then we did Leo Sayer.
Okay, so you're basically Leo Sayer's backing band. You guys.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you know, I was going to say, I like his earlier material like that. When he started selling out with "When I Need Love" and "You Make Me Feel Like Dancing," I was like, oh, I got so sick of hearing those songs, and they're too commercial, way too overblown commercial.
Well, when we started off with Leo,
yeah,
he had the clown suit on.
Yeah.
They put the band together. I got offered the gig. We got offered the gig. In fact, that was funny because we went to this big theatre in London and everybody's auditioning. And Adam Faith went, the bass player out of this band come down and they're doing blah, 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 right? And we said, look, man, you know, we'd done a couple. We said, look, I'm afraid it's either all of us or none of us.
Okay.
Right? So they said, okay. So we got the gig as a whole piece. And Leo was weird. Okay. I gotta say, it was weird. And we didn't get. I won't say we didn't get on. We did kind of get on, but we weren't really that happy about being with him all the time. You know, he was a bit strange. And Adam Faith was. Have you ever seen Stardust?
Yes.
That Adam Faith. That's him playing him.
Yes. Right.
And so we'd done the tour really cheap, right? Really cheap. Like, it was a big mistake. They asked us how much we wanted. We said it. And he said, okay. If we'd have asked for double, we'd have got it. Right?
Okay.
And anyway, so when it came to the second album with Make Me Feel Like Dancing and all that rubbish, you know, we were going, you know, and we didn't have any interest in it at all. And then they invited us down to the studio. And when we got there, there's a pair of headphones, and the engineers in the studio playing this track, right? And we're not on it. So we looked at it because we got in there to talk about more money. And we just got the sack, you know. Okay. Yeah. Anyway,
well,
the clown stuff was great. Leo would never have got away with that if the band hadn't been great.
Yeah. Okay.
If the band had been shit, he wouldn't have got away with it. But because the band was really good, and him on that, it made it like, wow, you know. But then when he took the clown suit off and he went into all that other stuff.
Right.
You know,
Right. Yeah.
whatever.
Well, he was in the spotlight for a little bit, I guess. Was there anything that happened between Leo Sayer and Bandit in the band Bandit?
Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, after Leo, our band was getting we had a record deal set up for ourselves, you know? And around this time, I was living in Muswell Hill.
Okay.
And in London, North London. And Muswell Hill is quite an artistic area. The Kinks are from there, and you know, whatever. And
Muswell Hillbillies, yeah.
That's it, yeah. And so I'd met Cliff Williams at that time. He was in a band called Home with Laurie Wisefield.
Oh, okay. Right, right. And
And
Laurie went on to play in the Wishbone Ash.
Yeah.
And then
Tina Turner.
And then Cliff Williams, AC/DC. Yeah, yeah.
That's right, yeah. So anyway, where am I? Oh, yeah. So we were getting ready for this record deal. And John started, we were like hanging on for money because we didn't have any money because we weren't doing gigs. But we had this record deal in the pipeline. And John started messing about. It's a long story, but I just thought, and I was struggling to get money. And he went on off and did a tour with somebody. I thought, oh, come on, man, So I decided I'd had enough. And at that time, the phone rang, and one of my friends from San Francisco phoned up, a girl.
Okay.
And she said, look, I'm in this band and we need a guitar player. Will you come over for the summer and play in the band? We'll pay your flight and we'll get a flat for you. You got a flat with the other guitar player and just do the summer with us. It'd be great. So I thought, why not, So I went over there, joined this band. It was called Elvis Duck. And it became a bit, I think it's a bit of a cult.
Okay, okay.
And so I played around the Bay Area with them. And they were a good band. They had a big following and all that. We played all around the Bay Area. And we played with people like Sons of Champlin, Tower of Power, some really great people, And I got some really good opportunities, I went down and played with Gregorico and Bobby Vega at Sly and the Family Stone. And I did some sessions for, what's it called? The guy, I'll think of it in a minute, with the keyboard player from Van Morrison, because one of the girls that joined the band was Janet Morrison.
Okay.
And Ted, keyboard player, became famous producer. Anyway, I did some sessions for him. I played with Gaylord Birch out of the Pointer Sisters.
Okay.
People like that. And I had a great time. I had a really, really good time. And one of my friends had a shop in San Rafael and a guitar shop. And I used to hang around there a lot. And I had my eye on this Telecaster. I put a deposit on it. When I came back to London, which I'll tell you about in a minute, I phoned him up and said, all right, I've got the money, send me the telly. He said, I've sold it. I said, you what? Sold it. Who to? Graham Nash. I went, man, I got... And anyway, so later on, I'm sitting there watching Crosby, Stills and Nash, and Steve Stills has got this great telly, and I think, I love that sound, I'm going, yeah, my telly, man.
It was yours.
Steve Stills, I love Steve Stills. I mean, I love Crosby, Stills and Nash. And interestingly enough, in Colosseum, we did this film called Super Session or Super Show, it might have been. I've got it, it's DVD and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was loads of people in this film studio. And there was Buddy Guy there, and Led Zeppelin were there, Jack Bruce, and other people. But also, there's a band called Juicy Lucy. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Yes, I have.
They were there, and Modern Jazz Quartet were there. But who was there was Steve Stills playing with Buddy Miles.
Ah, okay.
Brilliant, right? Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And then, still in Colosseum, we did a gig at London University, and it was the last night of the Hollies.
Okay.
When Graham Nash left the Hollies at that night.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, I'm touring the States, and all I'm hearing all over the place is Crosby, Stills and Nash, So that was really great. But getting back to... what was I getting back to? San Francisco.
Yes,
Oh, yes. Yeah. So I had a great time. But then my visa was running out. And at that time, Cliff Williams phoned me up. He said, listen, I've got a band together. Do you want to come over and do it? We've got a singer, we've got, So I said, yeah, great. So got on the plane, came over, met everybody, went to the first rehearsal, and I walked in. It was Danny McIntosh there on guitar, right? And I'm very quick at sussing out who's good and who's not, And I already knew Cliff anyway. Listened to Danny for about 2 seconds. Yeah, he's good. Listened to the drummer. I thought, what? No, man, I can't work with that. He was awful. Didn't realise that it was Jim Diamond's mate. So anyway, I said, he's got to go, man. I can't be doing this, Because the drummer's everything. The drummer and bass player in a band are everything.
Yeah.
And so I said, I know a guy. So I had 2 guys in mind. The first guy we got, he was really good. And then he was iffy about whether he wanted to do it or not. So I got Graham Broad down.
Okay.
And Graham Broad was brilliant. And he played with the Jacksons and everything, He was just great. And he was a friend of Dave Rose's in the first band, which is what I said about.
Right.
When I got Dave. So I phoned up Graham. He came down, did the audition. Everybody went, wow, right? So that was that. And then the other guy come back and said, look, I want the gig. And we said, well, sorry, man, you got the chance. And now we've got this guy. He's great, Anyway, so that went on. And we got management and everything and got the album deal. We auditioned for Clive Davis.
Okay.
And he signed us and Whitney Houston on the same day.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah. And then me and Cliff had done the demos. We produced the demos in Chappell's studios. Chappell's was the publishers. And when it came to we got the deal. And then we went to, they put us in Ramport Studios, which is the Who studios, to do the album. And the minute I walked in, I hated it. They had JBLs, right? Speakers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, JBLs are great speakers for home stuff, but they're they were at that time, absolute rubbish producing them because they were bass heavy.
Okay.
They were flattering, right? And we had this producer called John Alcock, who'd done Thin Lizzy and all that. And I wasn't happy about the speakers, but to put it bluntly, John Alcock and I just didn't get on. Not at all. Right?
Yeah.
And there was one point, we'd had a really good day. And me and Danny got on great. Right? Danny McIntosh.
Yeah.
And we'd had a really good day. We've been partying. We were in a great mood. We put a load of stuff down. Come to the guitars. And it's about 11 o'clock at night. And my fingers are like this, ready to go. Danny's were like this. We were ready, man. We were so up, Yeah. I said, right, John, let's go and do the guitars. And he said, oh, no, I'm going out. I said, John, let's do the guitars, man. Yeah. He said, no, I'm going out. I said, you can't. We're in the groove, man. This is great. We'll have it done in an hour. All the guitars. It's a one-take job the whole way through the album, man. We're cooking, And you never get that opportunity where you're cooking at the moment, you're ready to go, and the mic's there. Yeah, you work your life for that, He wouldn't have it, I said, John, I said, I'm going to do this once and I'll never do it again. You'll never see this again. I got on my knees and I said, please let us do the guitars. And he said, no. And I got up and I said, man, that's me and you done. Mm-hmm. We're done.
Yeah.
And
wow.
We had a track on there called Mr. James.
Mm-hmm.
And when we did, it had 3 verses. Right? And when we did it, John came in the studio and he said, it's too short. So we repeated a verse. When they did the mix on the album, they got some journalist in to listen to it, and they said, oh, it's too long. So they cut a verse out. Well, they didn't cut the verse out, the extra one. They cut one of the other ones out, the meaningful one.
Right.
Right. And so I was, when I heard the mix, interestingly enough, they put us out on tour with Alexis Corner.
Okay.
Because he was in the same management company. And so the idea was we toured with Alexis, and we'd go on as the support band, and then we'd come on as his backing band.
Okay.
Which is what we did. And we was on that tour, and Alexis was great. He was just a lovely man, and really great. I loved his voice. He was great, and just a lovely bloke, And we're in the van, and I got the mix of the album, and I heard the track. If John had been there, I would have murdered him. I was so angry. And there was no bass on the tracks.
Right.
The bass, I'm not talking about the bass playing, I'm talking about there's no oomph at all, because the JBLs, what happens is you get the right sound on there, but when you take it off and put it on another system, it's over. There's no bass. It's the opposite of what it should be,
Yeah.
And I thought the album was absolute crap.
Yeah.
Except for, some of the things we did. I liked Hung Up On Your Love and a few other things we've done. And the guitar parts I'm quite happy with. But I was furious. And then this is the point of the story. I was literally raging, right? And we went into this hotel, and it was like a chateau, and it was beautiful. And I've gone into into my room. I checked into my room, and Alexis popped his head in the door and he said, "Jim," he said, don't unpack yet." So I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Because we've all got showers, and the roadies haven't got showers." He said, "And if the roadies ain't got showers, we're not having it, right?"
Okay.
Because they really need it. Obviously, they're working their arse off,
Exactly.
And she said, "So wait till we sort something out." And I said, "Okay." And I'd gone the other way. I'd gone like, I couldn't believe what a nice guy Alexis was and all that, And he was putting money in just for the fact that the roadies could have a shower.
Right.
And a lot of people wouldn't have done that.
No.
And I was in tears because I was raging one minute, totally loving the other minute. I was like, all over the place. Yeah. And he did. He moved to another hotel so the roadies could have showers. Yeah, great. So, and then we got home, and by this time there was a plot going on to get rid of me and Cliff.
Okay.
And I said, "Well, if you're going to get rid of Cliff, get rid of me, because I'm not interested in. I don't want to be in a band like that,
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what they did. So we did the old grey whistle test, and again, like, sabotage me because you could hardly hear me, The next morning, we got a meeting in the office, and there's my guitar and my amp. In fact, not my amp, my guitar. And so we went, "Right, thank you very much, good day."
Yeah.
But I said, "I'll have a release from everything," right?
Right.
And I said, "Oh, no, you're all right." I said, "No, man, I'll have a release from everything, and I'll have it now." Because we were like signed for this, separately and together,
Right.
So he said, "No, you're right." I said, "Man, if I don't get a release, this office is going to be a mess." Really,
Yeah.
So he gave me a release. Later down the line, Jim had sued Graham Broad for money, for loads of money. And Graham didn't deserve that.
No.
And that lawsuit went on for years. And luckily I was way out of it because I got the release, which I've still got.
Yeah.
So that was an unhappy time for me.
Wow.
And after that, I thought, you know what? I've had enough of this shit. I've been working for about 10 years, touring the world, doing albums, blah, blah, blah. I've got no money.
Yeah.
This is a nonsense, you know? So I bought an acoustic guitar, a really nice one. And I learned how to play it. Because all I could play guitar, playing acoustic is completely different.
Yeah.
And I wanted to sort of slap and bang and make percussive stuff and all that, like, so I could accompany myself singing. And I worked acoustically for about 10 years. And I did loads of sessions. So I was doing sessions, gigs. I started teaching guitar because one of the things I learned in America was that these guys who were just working musicians and didn't have management and didn't have lawyers and accountants and all that shit, they were making a living grassroots, you know?
Yeah.
So I decided that's what I would do. And I did. And I spent many years just doing gigs, sessions. I did loads and loads and loads of sessions. And I was teaching. And I did mostly sessions with one guy, a guy called Steve Parsons.
Okay.
Who was a producer. He was great. He knew exactly what he wanted, you know. And in fact, it was funny. He was in the same management company as Bandit. And after Bandit, I met him in a shop in Muswell Hill because he lived up there. I said, "Hi, Steve, how's it going?" He said, "Oh, great, man." He said, "I'm just putting a studio together." I said, "Well, that's funny because I'm just putting one together as well." I said, "I won't mind coming down and having a look what you got." Right? So he said, "Great, what about Friday?" So I said, "That's great, I'll come down." And I think by that time I was living in Enfield. And he said, "But if a job comes in, I'll have to do the job, you know," because he was doing jingles and stuff. So I said, "That's fine, you know, I'll make it another day, just let me know." Anyway, so on the Friday, he phoned me up, he said, "I've got a job coming." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "That's all right." And he said, "Well, what are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "What are you doing today?" I said, "I'm not doing anything. I was coming over to see you." He said, "Well, why don't you come over and bring a guitar?" I said, "Okay." So went in the kitchen, had a cup of coffee, sitting there chatting away, blah, blah, blah. He said, "Do you want to come and see the stuff?" I said, "Yeah, man, let's have a look." So I went in there. He said, "Do you want to put a big guitar on it?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So he played the stuff. He said, "Can you just put this there?" And blah, blah, blah. I said, "Yeah, blah, blah." Did it. Come back, had another coffee, and he said, "Right, I've got to go, Steve." He said, "Well, 60 quid, all right?" I said, "What?" He said, 60 quid. I said, "For what?" Yeah. He said, "We just done a session." Uh-huh. That's what I didn't think it was a session. I was just doing you a favour, man. I said, "No, I've got a budget." I said, "Yeah, great." So I get on the bus, I'm thinking, that was nice. Yeah.
Right.
And in fact, I was in the car, actually. I wasn't on the bus, I was in the car. And I'm thinking, that was great. Anyway, so after that, he phoned me up all the time. We did hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of things. Mm-hmm. And it was like Ford, Peugeot, Citroen, mozzarella, you know, you name it, we were doing it, you know. But it was mostly it was original music. Mm-hmm. And then so we went on for a long, long time like that. And he got very successful. Mm-hmm. And I got a lot of work. And then the fashion changed and people were starting doing covers and, you know, like, hits and stuff like that in adverts. So that was the end of that, really.
Yeah. At the end of the 80s, I think, you're right. It kind of went. Yeah, it was very lucrative for a while. I've heard that story. Yeah. And what was the thing behind if you play some music, you get paid for that, but if you sing, you get paid twice. You get paid.
Yeah, you get doubling. I mean, I was interestingly enough, that will bring us on to another topic. When I came back from the States, with Billy Roberts and all that, I'd met some really good harmonica players. One guy called Steve Gurr, who was great. He was only young, he was about 17. And that really, because I'd always liked to tinkle with harmonica, but never any good, you know. Anyway, so I met these really good harmonica players. I thought, oh, I would really like this. I like the sound of this. I really like it. So I decided to have a go at it, you know, to get really stuck into it. And anyway, and then Billy Roberts came over and gave me the harmonica, as I said. But around that time, and doing all the gigs I was doing, I'd also met another guy, guitar player, American singer, and we did a load of stuff acoustically in the clubs and that around here. And we did really well out of that. And then, but I met this guy called Paul Rowan, who was a harmonica player, English, and he was he'd played with Muddy Waters and, you know, Champion Jack Dupree and a few other, Howlin' Wolf, I think. But he'd done a lot of stuff, and he was really good. And I started doing gigs with him, and he showed me a lot. And the interesting thing is, I went to his funeral yesterday.
Just yesterday?
Yeah, yesterday, yeah. And he was a great player, brilliant, and he had a great sound. And he said to me, I said, well, I'm really interested in harmonica, I play a little bit. He said, do you play with your tongue? And I said, I don't know what you mean. He said, well, if you don't know what I mean, you don't play with your tongue. Right? Okay. So he showed me a technique called tongue blocking. And it took me about 5 years to get it, because I've been what they call lip pursing.
Okay.
And now I only play harmonica at the moment, because my hands are pretty much gone and I'm not playing guitar.
Okay.
So harmonica is my main instrument now. And I'm loving it. It's like a whole new world. I love it. Anyway, so I practiced for about 5 years, and I did a lot of gigs with him, and I learned a lot from him. He was great. And I'm in a shop one day, a music shop in North London, talking to a young guy about harmonica, all infused and all that. I get home, I'm in the studio, and I had a phone that was like a frog, right? You flip it open, the bottom of the thing goes like that, and that's where you speak into. Yeah. And it had eyes that lit up when it rang.
Really? Okay.
So I got my mate to take the ringer off, because if I'm doing a take and the eyes go off, I don't need it ringing, do I? You know. So yeah. I'm sitting there doing something, and the eyes are flashing. So I pick it up, and it's a guy called Paul Lamb. I don't know if you know, you've ever heard of him. He was there yesterday. Paul Lamb is in a band called Paul Lamb and the King Snakes.
Okay.
He's a really good player. He lives locally to me. He's really good, really nice bloke. And he said, there's a theatre thing going, and I've been asked to do it, and I can't do it. I'm touring. He said, would you be interested? I said, yeah, all right. I'll think about it. And at the time, I was doing really well. I was doing sessions, gigs, teaching, you know, blah, blah, blah. But I was getting bored with it. I needed to move on. I like to move on to things, you know. I don't like sitting in a rut. I like to learn.
Yeah.
And I'd never done theatre. So I said, yeah, sounds good. I'll have a look at that. So anyway, I phoned up the guy, the MD, who was a guy called Keith Heyman. And he finished up working with Cliff Richard, I think. Okay. And really nice bloke. And good as well, really good. And he's going through the money, you know, and you get money for being on stage as opposed to in a pit, because it was a show about the Cavern in Liverpool.
Oh, okay, okay.
That's what it was, and we were supposed to be like the Beatles. Okay. And he had a star who was on the door. Right? It turned out the star was Gary Glitter.
Oh. Okay.
Say it now, and everyone goes, "Oh!" But at the time, he was quite a star, you know. Anyway, so but you get money for being on stage. You get money for doubling, because I was playing harmonica, I was playing guitar, and I was singing. It was a harmonica gig, but I was playing guitar and I was singing. So I got money for that, each extra one, and then you got money for hotels, and you get money for travel, for train fares. So, and I'm working it out and thinking, I can't make this work because there's not enough money here, you know, because of what I'm already getting at home. Now, by this time, I've got, you know, mortgage to pay and family now, you know, and all this stuff. I've got, my James was about 2.
Yeah.
And, you know, and my wife's working from home because we didn't send James away or anything. We looked after him from the beginning. And I thought, how am I going to make this work, you know? but me and my wife we'd been into cycling and camping and hill walking and camping. We had all the gear, And I had a Himalayan mountain tent.
Oh, okay.
So I thought, well, if I use the tent and live in the tent, I can bank the money from the hotels, what they call gigs here. Right?
Yeah.
Because everywhere where there's a theatre, there's a lot of houses where they put the actors up and all that, the musicians. So that's what I did. And I never told anybody I was living in a tent. I used to arrive at the gig and everybody's running around for like money to put in the phone box to phone all these hotels up. And they're all saying to me, "Where are you staying?" I said, "I've got friends here, "Oh, really?" And at the end of the tour, "You got a lot of friends, man." And it started off, I was camping in the snow.
Oh.
And it finished up 6 months later. It was a 6-month tour. I was camping in red hot, And I'm getting fitter and fitter. And I was running and I'm brown and I'm eating well. I'm cooking my dinner and cooking my breakfast. And they're all like having to eat in restaurants and going to, clubs at night and all that. And none of them had any money. And I finished up making money and paying all the bills.
Well, let me ask you, where would you wash up or take a shower?
Well, all the campsites I stayed at, they've got all washing facilities and showers, all that, yeah. And I was out of season as well in the winter, so I was getting it for cheap, really cheap, Okay. So, yeah, that was great. And I came back and I got offered. Now, by this time, Rod Edwards is now an MD in the West End, doing theatres. And he offered me Blood Brothers.
Ah, okay.
Which is a big show in the West End. Because I've just come off a tour doing theatre. So by now I'm into the routine of theatre. Right? And he said, "Come down and we want a guitarist." So I went down there and there was a guitarist who was leaving. And so I watched the show and I'm sitting there and Rod goes, and everybody goes, stop, right? And then the guitarist puts his guitar down and he picks up a magazine and he's reading this magazine. And I'm sitting there. Right? Half an hour later, puts his guitar down. Rod goes, and then puts it down. Oh, can't get this. This is, I'd rather be in a pub with a fight. This is interesting. I can't do with this, And the guys in the band were Dave Rose, who'd been in my band, and Nick Pentelow, who'd been in Gary Moore's band, and he'd been on my albums. He's on my albums, Nick. I've known Nick for years. And so I could have got on with everybody, I just didn't fancy it at all. It was like going to the office. And then, like later on, Laurie Wisefield did "We Will Rock You," the Queen thing in town in London, in the West End, right? And he offered me half of it, right? So I would do 4 days, he'd do 4 days, right? 4 gigs. I do 4 gigs, he'd do 4 gigs. I said, "Nah, sorry, man, I can't." Got to sit there learning all Brian May's parts and then, and go in a pit for 4 days a week. Yeah, I can do it. So.
Well, you turned that,
yeah. So like when I was with Bandit and because me and Cliff were real mates, we shared a room on tour and all that. He was a good bloke. And after we'd split up and all that, he didn't know what to do and all that. And then I heard of AC/DC looking for a bass player. I said to Cliff, they're looking for a bass player. Why don't you go and have a go? And he went down there, got the gig, and of course he'd been in there 40 years. He's worth 100 million. Result. So good for him. Yeah. But we were at there's a pub in Highgate called the Flask, and me and Cliff were in there. He was in by that time. He joined AC/DC. We were in there drinking, and Bon was with us. Bon Scott.
Yes, Bon Scott. Yep.
So we're all having a drink. A few weeks later, Bon's dead, and Cliff phones me up and said, "We're looking for a singer. Do you know any sing? We're looking for a singer." I said, well, I don't know any.
Yeah. Well, I like the Bon Scott era. I mean, I always liked his voice.
Yeah, but I don't regret not doing it.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
I really don't. I mean.
Oh no. Well,
I mean, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go your thoughts.
I was going to say, well, the interesting thing is, I was at John Wetton's funeral. I went to John Wetton's funeral.
Yeah, yeah.
And Mick Box was there from Uriah Heep, and I've known Mick for years. Yeah. And we were talking, and he said something like, you know what it's like, you're touring all the time, and you don't see your kids growing up.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I said, well, Mick, actually, no, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because luckily I wasn't touring all the time, and I could bring my son up,
And you could be with them. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think Mick is the only surviving original member, isn't he, of Uriah Heep?
Yeah.
I think so. They've all gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. We'll talk about your solo albums.
Mm-hmm.
Fourth Estate. That's the one where your track "Where to Turn," your son adapted it to the Wilhelm scream. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I'd written that in about 77, 78, something like that. And it was about the current time. I knew what was coming up. I could, it's in the Bible. Yeah. It's there, it's written down, man,
Uh-huh.
And so I knew it was coming. I didn't know how it was going to come, but I knew it was coming, which is what we're going through now. Yeah. And because I don't know if you know, but the apocalypse means unveiling. And it's all unveiling now, man.
Yes, it is. Really.
And so I wrote it, and years later, and I put it on the album. Mm-hmm. And again, Fourth Estate, it says it all. I mean, it's about the media.
Yeah.
Now, this is 1978, whatever. So what we're going through at the moment, media.
Yeah.
The media is unbelievable. Funnily enough, I was going to wear a T-shirt today, but I didn't. Helen said, my wife said, no, I wouldn't do that, But on it says, mainstream media, harmful if swallowed. And, but so anyway, basically, all of that was quite personal to me. And so I wrote Where to Turn. But when later on, James heard it, when he started producing, and when he started doing stuff with Logic and all that, and he was doing it in the house and stuff, which I was really flattered by. Having your own son do one of your songs is just really flattering, But he missed out the most important part, because he was young and he didn't understand what it meant, right? Yeah. And the verse was, where to turn when the joys of all creation begin to burn. Where to turn with the truth before my eyes, though it's hard to realize, just watch it dance. It's hard to find, or is it only in my mind? And so he left that bit out. Yeah. So, and he called it the Wilhelm Scream, which is fine. I mean, it's cool. We're all cool with it. But that album was, I was very much into home studio and recording equipment. Right? And I used to watch, there was a magazine called Home Studio Recording, which is now called Sound on Sound. And I used to read it a lot, right, and find out what was coming up. And at that time, there was no real equipment that was capable of recording a proper album.
Okay.
It was all like, wasn't that good. Not the quality you need. And then this thing came out called the Akai MG14D, which was it was like a video cassette, and you got 12 tracks, but plus you got 12 tracks plus you got an extra track for MIDI time code.
Okay.
right? And this was well before computers were capable of the capacity to record multi-tracks. They didn't have the memory size. In fact, around that time, Pro Tools came out, and there was another one called, I can't remember what the other, Soundstage or something like that. And Pro Tools had its own computer, and it used your computer just to see what was going on.
Oh, okay.
But that's how it worked, right? Anyway, so as soon as the equipment came out, the MG14D, which is master quality, like a proper multi-track tape recorder. I borrowed a load of money from the bank, and I bought it, and I bought a mixing desk, and I set it up and spent like days and days and days and days and days soldering jack plugs and got XLRs and God knows what else, multi-cools, and all that stuff. Put it all together. And I did the album. In fact, funnily enough, I'd done 4 of the tracks. I'd actually, Where to Turn, I didn't do on the album, on that equipment. I'd done it with, I'd got a royalty check from John Eisman. Oh. And I went down to see him, got the check, and there was a bit of a dispute about royalties and stuff. Not royalties himself, but the accounting. And my mate, who was managing at the time, he'd been in Chappell's publishing, and he knew all about it. He said, "Well, this is not telling you anything, man. It's got units sold here, units sold there. It doesn't tell you anything, And I went to see John and got the money. John says, "Why don't you do your album here?" And he played me some stuff. And the drum tracks was like bum bum gum 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 bum bum gum gum gum, and I thought. So anyway, I put the money to. I did 4 tracks in Hank Marvin's studio.
Oh, Shadows.
Yeah, and I got the musicians. That was a bit of a long story, but basically we did Where to Turn, Sidetracked. We did a song called Easiest Way to Go, which I eventually changed to Something Inside of Me. Because Easiest Way to Go, the words were written, I was in a hurry to get it because I had another song. And then I think I had another song called Electric Kisses or something. And Eddie Grant came out with Electric Avenue. Yeah. I thought, I can't have that, so I rushed the songs through. And then Mike Harper, who wrote I Only Want to Be With You, he wrote the lyrics for it.
Oh, okay.
But there was a couple of lines in there I was never happy with, which he eventually changed. But by that time, I'd sort of rewritten the words to something else, something inside of me. And what was the other one I did? Only Your Love, that's right.
Okay.
And we did the album in downtime, right? Because the Shadows were using it in the week. Well, Hank Marvin lived in a place called Radlett, which is just not far from here, North London, and it's very posh area. It's a detached house, really nice house, and he's got it in the garage, right? Best equipment you could see, you could possibly imagine, but no actual studio. The studio itself was tiny. The control room was great, but the studio itself was tiny. So they did the drums in the kitchen. Okay. And the kitchen wasn't double glazed, right? So we did it at the weekend, downtime, and Colonel Blimp next door was mowing his lawn, getting pissed off because the drums are clattering about. So we had to bring the drums in, and then it caused a whole load of shit, right? And we had some problems as well because Bob Brady, who was on piano, was brilliant. His daughter got killed. So he was in bits while he was playing the piano, like little girl, like 8 or 10, got knocked over in the road, So it was quite a disaster in a way. And I came out of the studio, and I got a cassette and a receipt for about $3 grand. I thought there's got to be a better way than this. you know. And that's when I bought my gear. And I did all the other tracks, like Listen to the Wind and stuff like that. You know, from that day to this, not one person has ever said, that sounds a lot better than that.
Really, really.
Nobody. And I did it in my attic in a studio, you know, that I'd put together.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then the next album, years later, was I decided to put an acoustic album together so I could go out and do gigs on acoustic.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I did Real Men Cry.
Men Cry.
And Helen's mother was living with us at the time. And she died. She was about 90. She died. And I turned her room into a studio. And as she just died, I wrote Real Men Cry. And then I did the album in her granny annex.
Yeah.
Because before I was living in a flat, and we bought this house so we could look after her mum. Yeah. And build a granny annex, which we did. So I did that album in there, and then I started doing gigs on my own, playing acoustic, and decided this isn't music. Playing on your own is not for me, really. I mean, you know, it's all right. And I did one gig; it was great. I was supporting this Tex-Mex band, and because I'm slapping and banging and singing and all that. It's really great and impressive and all that. And after the gig, I thought, what was that about?
Yeah.
I'm just standing there showing off.
Yeah, yeah.
That's not playing music, you know. And I like interacting with people.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I like. I like to not know what I'm going to do, you know. Yeah. Not having it all set off routine and that's what you do. It's just boring.
Yeah. Well, on your on that album, Real Men Cry, that's my favorite of your solo album. That album.
Oh, thank you. Great.
The title track, really nicely done.
Thank you.
In fact, I like the whole album because it's got the slower, mellower tracks, and more heartfelt. I think comes through.
One of my favorite tracks on that album is "It's All Over."
Yeah, that's another great.
I love that, and that's really, it's a true story.
Yeah.
About a friend, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't think he even knows it. But anyway, so then the last album, which is my favorite, Back and Blue.
Yeah.
I decided, you know, by this time, I was looking after my mother, right, in the same room. Oh, by the way, in between, James had done his first album in the bedroom upstairs, in his bedroom, on a laptop, right? And his second album, he did downstairs in the studio. I did in the room that I did Real Men Crying. After I'd done Real Men Cry, and that obviously because the first album, his first album, got nominated for Ivor Novello Award for what do you call it? Not Where to Turn, the other one, Willow Scream, and which I've got the certificate here, and it got nominated for a Mercury Prize. Right? He's next, and so he'd done that in the bedroom. Yeah. This one he'd done down here in the back room. This one won the Ivor Novello with Retrograde, and it won the Mercury Prize. So it was great. So basically, by that time I was looking after my mother, and I had nowhere to go because she was by that time in the granny annex. After James had done all that, you know, she couldn't look after herself, and so I said, "Okay, time to come down." So I looked after her, and I had nothing to do. I'm twiddling my fingers all the time. I've got nowhere to play, you know. Yeah. So I built a studio in the garden, which is where I'm sitting now, and so I did Back and Blue, which is songs I'd had for a while. Some of them I'd just written, some of them I'd had for a while, and meant to, you know, been working on them and had them in the back of my mind. And as I'm doing it, I'd been having problems getting upstairs, you know. And I went to the doctors. I had loads and loads and loads of tests and stuff. Anyway, it finishes up. It's this thing called myositis, which is Peter Frampton's got it as well.
Oh, okay.
And it affects your legs and your hands. So I've got no strength in my hands. And so, although I'm still walking, but I'm not great, you know. But I feel healthy, you know, in every other way. Yeah. But as I'm doing the album, Back and Blue, because I met a guy called Cliff Brown in Northampton who makes these amps called 633 amps, and he's brilliant. And I bought them, and we became good friends. And he's really quite a genius as well. And anyway, he helped me mix it and engineer it at the end. But as I was doing it, I could feel my fingers getting tired, which is weird because I played all my life and I've played 10 hours a day, you know, never thought about it. Yeah. So I could feel my fingers getting tired, and I thought, this is really weird. So I'm really glad I did it, because that's possibly the last album on guitar I'll ever do. And as I realised my hands were going, I thought, well, what am I going to do here? But I'd been playing harmonica for years, right? And I was pretty good, and everybody thought I was really good, right? But I wasn't good for me.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know,
right.
I knew I was getting away with it. I mean, I could play, and to what I was playing, I played pretty well, you know, quite well, very well. But I knew if I was going to use it as a main instrument, that wasn't good enough, because most harmonica players, there's 10 holes, right? 20 notes. But you bend notes to make them.
Right.
Most players only use 6 holes. Because
okay.
the crossover from 6 to 10 is very difficult. Okay. And so I thought, well, you know, I've got to work this out, you know. If I'm going to just use it as a main instrument, I can't be just doing blues. I like blues, but 2 12 bars, I'm done, you know, I've had enough. And when I go and see people playing harmonica and blues, it's all 12 bars, and I just think, next.
Yeah.
So, because I'm into all sorts of music.
Right.
I'm into country music.
Yeah.
Soul music, R&B music. You know, you name it, I'm into it, you know.
Right. A lot of use the harmonica. So many, you know, genres use a harmonica. Can use a harmonica.
But there's some great players now. I mean, they've really like come on. You know, they've really taken the instrument and moved it forward. Yeah. You know, people like Howard Levy, who's just brilliant, and Jason Ritchie and Rolly Platt, and all of these really great players. They're playing really good. I mean, Rolly Platt was very helpful. I had a few lessons off him. He was great. Mm-hmm. But the most important thing was that I split music into about 3 categories, really. Same when I'm teaching guitar and stuff. You've got your R&B, 12-bar bluesy, rock and rolly type things, right? Chuck Berry and all that, which is what all harmonica players play.
Yeah.
And then you've got minor songs, right? And minor is really difficult I found it difficult on harmonica, because the harmonica is tuned to a major key. Mm-hmm. And then you've got very major 7th type things, like for instance, Bread. Hey, have you ever tried really reaching out on the other side? Right, that sort of thing, which is all very melodic, right? And loads of stuff like that, like Sailing, Christopher Cross, or stuff like that. You know, it's all melodic stuff. And you can't get away with playing blues harp on that shit, you know? It's never going to work.
It's not.
And Rolly Platt said it, you know, he said, like, harmonica players get up and they're all right playing rock and roll and blues. He said, the minute you play a country song, poof, you're flat on the face. You haven't got a clue, you know? So I had to work all that stuff out, which I did. Mm-hmm. And now I'm playing it like like I play guitar, really.
Yeah.
So I'm really loving it, you know. And it's been like, you know, one door closes, another door opens, and it's like walking into another room where it's all wonderful, and you've got all this stuff to learn, and it's great. And I love learning, you know.
Right.
It keeps your mind active.
Well, you know, what do they say about that? Once you stop learning, you might as well be dead, right? I mean, we're learning our whole lives. You know?
I'm learning so much, man, at the moment on so many different levels.
Right. All righty. Okay, James. Well, thank you again, and we will be in touch.
I've enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you. I did too.
One of the reasons I said yes is because I saw your interview with the guy. I can't remember his name now offhand, but the guy from Stoke-on-Trent was in.
Yeah, Climax Blues Band. Yeah. Derek Holt. Yeah, he was very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what helps, these connections, you know, when you see somebody you know that's done it. So that's how I'm getting, it's steamrolling a little bit, is getting, you know, more interviews, people that know, oh, I know him. Okay. So
I don't know him. I've never met him, but I liked his, and also I connected with him because he's literally from about 30 miles from where I'm from, you know.
Yeah.
So I got him. No, he lives in Spain now, but he was in Stoke. He was from Stoke-on-Trent.
Right, he was. You're right.
If you speak to him, tell him if he wants any harmonica on any of his tracks.
I'll let him know.
Oh, harmonies.
Yes, there you go.
He was a good singer.
Yeah, exactly.
What was he called? What was his name?
Derek Holt. Derek Holt.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
Derek Holt. Yep.
Yeah, he's not close.
Yeah. All righty, James. Well, you are very welcome, and I will let you know once I get this. Give you the link, and let's keep in touch. All right.
All right. That'd be great. All right.
All right.
Thanks, Greg.
All right. Bye-bye.
See you later. How do I stop it? Oh, yeah.